ऋचा मैम, आपके यहाँ से आवाज आ रहा है, प्लीज म्यूट कर लीजिए ऋचा मैम।
Good morning, everyone. So anyone volunteering to share their takeaways from the sessions? Yeah, Pinaki, you can go ahead.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Shivani.
Good morning, very good morning.
मौका मिला तो आज मैंने उठा ही लिया तो बातें करने के लिए। See, let me tell you what I bring in when I attend these programs, these sessions that are happening every Saturday at 7 a.m. You know, I tell myself that here's an opportunity to read a few pages of a book that the speaker is. So I treat the speaker and her or his experiences as a book. And I take this as an opportunity to read that book. जितना pages मिल जाता है, जितना chapter मिल जाता है सुनने के लिए. And so naturally, I take keen interest in whatever the speakers say, whatever they put across. The intention behind coming up and participating or representing a piece of their life with us, sharing their life with us, their experiences with us. These are extremely valuable, extremely valuable. I cannot attach any price to it, by the way. Okay, so though you are charging 300 rupees even for the recordings, I'm telling you it's peanuts. It's peanuts. Maybe it's lesser than a peanut.
So it is just to ensure the seriousness towards learning.
It
is nothing to do with earning, right?
I got that. That's what I was saying. That's what I was. That what people are missing out, they can guess by what I'm saying.
Definitely.
Okay. And today's session is probably one of the sessions when I just logged in at 7 a.m. Normally log in after some time, because I think that I not only think, I've seen that it takes some time to start the sessions. People join in. So normally I join little later at 7 a.m. Today I joined at 7 a.m. You know why? Let me tell you honestly.
You got an opportunity. Yeah, can you repeat?
मुझे पता भी नहीं था मुझे opportunity मिलने वाला बोलने का.
Definitely.
आज का session attend करने के पीछे मेरा intention क्या है? Let me tell you honestly. See, people are hungry to tell their stories. People are hungry to tell their stories.
Everyone wants to express themselves.
Absolutely. आप किसी से भी बात करो, आप खाली उसको बोलो और कैसे हो या कैसा चल रहा है, और उसका अगर बोलने का मौका दोगे ना तो बोलता ही जाएगा. So people are hungry to tell their stories, and I am not an exception. Even I want to tell my stories. So मुझे लगा कि आज का session अगर 7 बजे शुरू हो जाए and I miss the initial few minutes तो गया. आज का मौका छोड़ना नहीं. It's a wonderful opportunity for me to learn the art of storytelling.
Definitely. So we have today with us storytelling coach Anupriya. So let's hear from her. We welcome you, Anupriya. And before proceeding, I would like to have a formal introduction. Hello and welcome, Anupriya. You are on mute.
Yes, I am. I was on mute.
Okay, so how are you?
Pleasure.
How have you?
It's an absolute pleasure, and I am also in awe. 22 people logging in at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Oh, it's actually out of my league. So you can see the special preparations I made to log into this session. But others look like it normally hum karte hain. So I'm in absolute awe. Looking forward.
So our audience count that joins us 7 a.m. Goes up till 40 to 50 people join in. Maybe some may be joining after some time. So because it's early morning and not everyone is ready by this time. But to develop ourselves into the personal growth, the first thing is we must be a morning waker, and because the mornings are those special hours when the world is asleep and we can gain a lot in these 3 hours. So that's the motto. So that was the reason behind why Rajkumar sir suggested this to be 7 a.m. only and no other time. So this was the motive behind starting it at 7 a.m. And now let me introduce you to our audience. So Anupriya is a human resource professional for more than 10 years. And now she is a career counselor and coach for the last 8 years. Anupriya has reached out to over 8,000 students and professional training them on leveraging storytelling for growth and impact. Her passion for storytelling runs deep as an ardent reader as well as an author. So wonderful, you are an author as well. She has authored 6 books. Oh my God. So that's an incredible achievement. 6 books, including fiction and non-fiction. We will definitely like to read your books. Her passion for storytelling runs deep as an ardent reader, and she's a curator at several speaker events such as TEDx Chowdhary, Picha Kucha, Kolkata, and TikToks, and several other public speaking platforms. Anupriya has helped over 100 speakers script their stories and share their best My Story. Earlier this year in Feb, she was also recognized among the top 50 most innovative storytellers in India in 2023. We congratulate you. That's a good achievement. This was at World HRD Congress, and recently in August, she was facilitated by the President of India for her contributions to the Army Wives Welfare Association for their initiative Asmita, Inspiring Stories by Army Wives. That's another feather that you put on your cap. So we look forward to learn from your wisdom. We welcome you, and you can share your insights with our audience. Welcome.
Thank you, Shivani. Thank you so much. I totally understand, it's a Saturday morning and most of us are off camera, but I would love it in between if you have any questions. And let's keep it interactive because सुबह lecture देने का मन नहीं है बिल्कुल भी. आप लोग सुनने के मन में है पर मैं बोलने के मन में नहीं हूँ. And I would like to ask you, we all have come across the idea of storytelling mostly. So just by a show of hands or typing in a yes in the chat box, if you could let me know that most of you, if you have come across the concept of storytelling at work. Kalpana, thank you so much for being that prompt. What about the others? Baki sab. Shruti hasn't come across. All right. Okay. All right. Looks like a 50-50 tie right now. I'll wait for another 15 seconds. My God, absolute 50-50 proportion. It's like a yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Okay. So the question is, how many of you, or rather type in a yes, if you have come across the concept of storytelling at work. Pinaki needs clarity. We'll talk about clarity. So looks like it's a 50-50 mix, wherein some people have come across the idea of storytelling and some have not. So because we are looking at collective learning and collective upliftment for the benefit of those who haven't come across the idea of storytelling, I want to tell a story early this morning. Now, I've been married for 13 years. And for the first 7 years of my life, I was working in a full-time job. I have been an HR professional for 10 years, which was like 8 years ago. Looks like another lifetime. But you'll have to excuse my bad throat. For once, I thought I'll cancel the session, but then the idea of logging it at 7 o'clock was way too enticing. So I refrained from canceling the session. But bear with my bad throat and the coughing in between, intermittent coughing.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Hiraniji. So what happened was that when my first one was born, I still continued to work. I was like, ek bacha hai. I live in a joint family in Kolkata. So I had the support system. So I thought I can leave that child behind and go to work. But how many of you are working women, working mothers over here? Please, you may raise your hands if you're working mothers. Kalpana, Manisha. All right. So you will identify, Nirupama, you will identify with my tyranny. You do some housework, some house chores in the morning, and then you head to office. And then you come back and it's not day over. It's just half the day done. Even at 7 p.m. in the evening, it's just half the day done. Because you got to come back, tackle some home chores, and spend some time with the child and pack an entire day's love, enthusiasm, and responsibility as a mother for that child, towards that child in those 1 or 2 hours. And then you got to cater to your in-laws. You got to also cater to your husband. You got to cater to yourself for your wellness. Only then you can call it a day. So that was my routine. And one of the days I returned home and my mother-in-law, she was like, I have a list of chores to be done in terms of shopping. So I've just entered home and she's given me a list of things which needs to be shopped. And this was like 10 years ago when I was using WhatsApp, but my mother-in-law wasn't using WhatsApp. So actually, and she didn't know how to SMS. And she was like, I just thought I'll wait for you to come home so that then you can go to the market and get the groceries. I was like, all right. And then she tells me that the kid has slept for 4 hours in the afternoon.
Oh.
I love that reaction. That absolutely encapsulates my reaction and my thoughts and my feelings. कि अभी रात का me time गया. Husband time, me time, sab gaya. It's gone for a toss. So, and I was tired. And that night, when the child was, over my tummy, all around me, his father, and he's making a ruckus while I'm enjoying his antiques. I loved his antiques, but I was tired. I was exhausted. And I was like, my God, will this ever get over? And I had a new smartphone, WhatsApp. There was WhatsApp, of course. And then there was this flexibility to just browse while I was just lying down on the bed. And I found this one interview. And this interview had been my go-to place whenever I felt tired as a mother, as a housemaker, homemaker, as a working mother. And I opened this interview and this lady says, and she's a world leader, and she says that, my mother was very clear about one thing. And that was that when you come inside this house, you got to keep your hat from your work outside in the garage. There's a long story. I'm cutting it short because we have less time and a lot to talk about. And you got to keep that hat outside. And when you come inside,
Yes,
I want you to be just a mother, a wife, a daughter-in-law, and the mistress of this house. So any guesses who am I talking about?
Yes, Indra.
Indira Nui. Imagine a world leader also facing the same problem as me. You got to balance work and life. And then I thought, my God, this world leader, she's gone at lengths to describe this complete story. So there's an entire story, how she was promoted to the CMD and she came home and all of that. And then she felt, why would my mother do this? And then her mother says this to her. Now it's like, main kis khet ki mooli hu, who am I? I can, of course, manage them. So imagine when a world leader shares her stories, shares moments of her weakness with the world. So many women like me find the strength to go on. So isn't it our responsibility to share our stories with whoever could benefit from them? How many of you think it is important to share our stories? Not just because they benefit us, I'll talk about how they benefit us, but isn't it our responsibility to share our stories with the world? If you agree with me, type in a Y, please, in the chat box. Thank you, Shivani, for the 100%. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Kalpana. Yes, I see all the women saying a big yes. Is it because the story I used was a woman leader? Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you, Dr. Rajkumar. Thank you, Jagdish. Thank you, Alok Sethi.
I said yes, but I wasn't able to type. Sorry.
Okay, so Pinaki says agree to disagree. I will park that for a later discussion, Pinaki. But this is something that I came to realize almost, my son is now 10 years. This incident is from 8 years ago. And that was when that one instance, or rather that one thought, led me towards storytelling. I said, okay, I was listening about storytelling before that. And I was like, okay, some concept in the world, there are enough concepts and everything doesn't need my attention. But this one absolutely caught my attention at that point of time. And then I started observing storytelling behaviors. I was still working then. I worked for another 2 years before I left my job after the birth of my second one. And that's when I started observing storytelling behaviors. And then I observed one more behavior. So when we talk about our family, when we talk about our childhood, when we talk about our siblings, when we talk about our aspirations and our dreams, who are the people who we talk to about all these things generally? You can put in your responses in the chat box, or if you're allowed to unmute, you can give your responses of friends, family and friends and family, our own mind, okay, self-talk, near and dear ones, brother. I like that answer. It tells me a lot about your relationship with your brother, Narendra. So I see that most of you are talking about a personal realm, right? Friends, family, closed ones, very close ones, near and dear ones, siblings. There's a bro code and there's a sister code too. What would happen if we shared these stories at workplace with our colleagues? Yes, Dr. Rajkumar, you are arriving at the right conclusion, but I will follow my course so that others who haven't come across the concept understand it better. It's difficult to find such colleagues. Yes, I come across this question a lot that, I'm opening up to in my workplace, I'm being vulnerable. It may be misused. That is a function of what stories to tell. So all of you have come across Simon Sinek's Golden Circle?
No.
No? All right. So in brief, what you need to do today is go back to the YouTube, search for The Golden Circle by Simon Sinek. It is one of the top 5 most viewed TED Talks across the globe. Search for that talk, view it, watch it, review it. I watch it almost every day. Almost every day, sometimes twice in a day, sometimes one day, leaving one day. So the average would come to 365 times in a year. And it says, there are 3 concepts, okay? It says why, how, and what. I reverse the order a little. The context you will understand. We don't have time for the context, but I reverse the idea a little. I say why, what, and how. How is the easiest thing to figure out. You need to figure out why you're doing what you're doing. You need to figure out what you will do with this why. And then the how becomes like semantics or the syntax. Start with why. Yes, that's one of the iconic books. And you got to have that book on my shelves. I have it on my shelf. So once you have, where was I? Yes, I was talking about in your workplace, when you have to share your stories, you have to identify the why. Why are you sharing this story? And we will talk about the different reasons why you need to tell your story. One of them is to inspire as a leader, like Indra and we did. It could be within an organization. It could be out open in the World Wide Web. That's one of the whys. The other why is, again, how many of you have heard about the organization called Buffer? Can I have anyone respond if you've heard about Buffer? Shivani has heard about Buffer. Okay, so for the benefit of those who don't know, Buffer is an online web-based tool and an app which enables you to schedule your social media posts across platforms. So if I want to schedule a post and content for next 1 month, I can do it using Buffer, and I can do it across platforms, across LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and probably YouTube too. So there are 2 founders to this organization. There's Joel, and then there is one more person. His name is called Leo. So Joel and Leo, these are 2 co-founders, and when they completed 1 year of the functioning of Buffer, they took their team, which was 8 people in size, they took them to San Francisco, and they had an offsite. And they were sitting on the dining table, and they realized that, it's quite quiet. And they also realized that these people don't know us they know us as the founders of this organization, but they don't know who Leo is actually, who Joel is actually. So they took turns and they shared with their team about their childhood, about their college days, about the story of how both of them came to meet each other and how Buffer came into existence. And because they shared their own stories, it was only logical as leaders, they asked their team members to share their stories of their childhood, their college days, and how they came to work for Buffer. And suddenly they realized there was kind of an ice broken. There was a different level of camaraderie. So they repeated the same next year when there were 24 people. They repeated the same next year when there were 80 people. There were 80 people. What they did was they separated them at different tables. They said, okay, this is your story circle. Share your stories. The next year, they were beyond 100 and they realized it's difficult ho gaya hai. It's become difficult operationally to share stories physically. So they stopped it. And then there were members, there were team leads who came back saying, there's a problem. We're missing sharing the stories with our team members. We are missing listening to their stories. So then what did Joel do was he created an online intranet platform wherein whoever joined the team would have to go to this portal and share their stories in a format which enabled the other team members to get an insight into this person. So the founders say, we don't know if it impacted the bottom line of the business. We have no proof of that. But as leaders, we definitely felt that it built up a culture of appreciating each other, of trusting each other. There is a saying, it says that it becomes easy to trust a person when you know their story. When you know why they're here, what brought them here, what's in it for them. If you know that, you are clear in your mind, uska objective kya hai yahan aane ka, what is their objective to be here? That's another reason, and that's another way you can share your personal stories at your workplace. So the earlier instance of Indra Nui was leadership influence. This instance is personal influence and culture building. Right? So now I want to ask you, would you be slightly more open to sharing the story of your background with your colleagues, with your team members? Yeah? Okay. I'll wait for some responses. Sakshi says yes. Thank you, Sakshi. If they don't misuse the information or the story. Yeah, so you have to be discreet. We keep the message focused. I'll come to crafting part. Shivani, just let me know how long can we carry on? How much buffer time do I have after 8 o'clock?
Yes, if the audience is interested, we can extend a bit.
All right. Thank you so much.
Maybe next 30 minutes, so sometimes we extend. If the session is going interesting and the audience is, whosoever has some urgent work can leave, others can continue.
Yes, we're going to play 30 minutes.
Right. So we will, of course, take the feelers whether people want to continue or not. There is a new concept. How many of you in the corporate, how many of you have heard the concept of executive presence? How many of you heard about the concept of executive presence in the workplace? It's primarily building up your personal brand as a leader in your workplace. Not just building up a personal brand on LinkedIn or in the World Wide Web, but very specifically focused on building up a personal brand as a leader in the organization. You represent an organization, you represent a culture, and you represent yourself, and that's called an executive presence. So when you have to build up your executive presence, what are the stories that you would tell? What is it that you want to establish? Do you want to establish your credentials? Yes? You can raise your hands if you don't want to type in the chat box. You can raise your hands. You want to establish your credentials? These are the places I have been. So at how many instances in an independent meeting, if you're an independent, self-employed person or a consultant, or if you're working in the corporate, how many of you times you have to walk up to a manager or a potential client and you have to tell them about, these are the places I have been. This is what I have done. You tell them, right? These are the stories of your credentials. How many of you have heard about the star approach? Star approach ke bare mein, have you all heard? Not heard. Okay. So that's another way of building up your executive presence, your personal brand, wherein you tell people that I was in a situation. For example, last morning, I received a call from a potential client, and the client was in a situation she needed to submit a pitch deck by 11 at night. And because she'd been busy with her work, she had had no time to work on the pitch deck, and she asked me if I could help her. That was the situation. The task at hand was to complete the pitch deck within 12 hours and put it in for submission. That was the task, right? What action did we take? I rushed to the client office, the client site, set myself in an office, in a conference room, got the person to sit with me for next 5 hours. We brainstormed ideas. I got clarity on data and information, and I started working on the pitch deck. That was the action that I took. What was the result? By 10:45 p.m., we had a full-fledged investment deck ready and submitted. It was slightly challenging for me with my bad throat and my kids at home who hadn't seen me after they had come to school. But I decided that this person is in need, and quick turnaround is my specialty. PowerPoints is my strength. And so I decided to go for the kill. And I'm happy I was able to accomplish the task. So is this a personal story? It is a story of me as a person and a profession, but it helps me build up my career brand. So the question wherein we say that people may misuse does not arise because I am the master of my stories. I decide which stories to share, and I decide how to share them, in what context. So this is a story which I use to build up my personal brand and my career brand. And this is a true story from yesterday, by the way. Now that this story, what is it that it tells you about me? I want you to respond in the chat box. What is it that you came to know about me from this story? One word. I don't want you to write full sentences or eulogies, but tell me one word that you took away about me as a person and a professional from this story. Commitment, going on. Okay, this is not fishing for compliments. Okay, I'm trying to make a point. I'll come to that point. Responsible, honest. Okay, determined, dedicated, not complaining. Sweet. Thank you so much. Connecting with the audience, positive. Fine. So the point is, when you listen to my story, you make some perception about me. You might think you made a perception about yourself. But actually, I led you to make that perception about you, me. I made sure that I share a story with you that gives you an impression that I am a committed and a dedicated professional. My perception, your perception of me gets determined by the story I tell you. So I'm not saying that share Sheikh Chilli ki kahaniyan. I'm not saying that build up castles in the air. The prerequisite is you share authentic stories. The only difference is you share stories which are crafted consciously, which have been identified consciously. And you know which story to share where. When I say tell stories about your childhood, it is about, I'll come to the rules of sharing the story, okay? Just give me some time. I don't want to get carried away. I want to stick to my script. So these are the reasons. I've covered the reasons, okay? Once you're clear, yes, your story about me. I'm telling you my story so that you can make a perception about me. So once the why is clear, then it takes me 15 minutes to tell you which stories to share. And then the how is actually, there is a method to it, and it could be direct, they'll say, depending on the situation. So in most of my sessions, 50, 55, 60% of my time goes into explaining to people why you need to share your personal stories, because people, most of them, like some of you here, have this apprehension it might be misused. You are not to tell them the stories of the blunders that you made. You got to tell them the stories of the blunders that you made, which you were able to tackle. I like your reaction, Suraj. So that you tell them all is never lost. So I'll give this example, okay? My teacher, Amin Haq, I was in a session with him and he shared this instance that he was working with a client wherein the leaders of that organization, they called him in and they said, we want you to formulate a mechanism wherein our team members, our employees can share stories of their failures. So every week on the bulletin, so this is the time when, WhatsApp wasn't very popular. There was an intranet and there was a bulletin board. There used to be a bulletin board. So on the bulletin board, there would be a story of a failure by an employee. What were they trying to achieve by sharing stories of failures? So I'm breaking that myth also that I can't share my failure stories. What were the leaders trying to do? And it is an outlier case. It is not a usual case. I agree. That's a disclaimer. Learnings from that. Yes. Lessons from that. That's like the tip of the iceberg. Let me also give you a clue. The lessons from failures, that was just the tip of the iceberg of what they were trying to achieve. Anyone would like to take a try on what more were they trying to achieve?
You're used to the experience that people go through. And from that, you are already aware if such thing comes up later at any point of time, you are already prepared to.
Used to creating a reference point.
Ready for yourself, yeah.
That's one more thing. Alok hit the nail at the right point when he said, making people comfortable with failures. Now, this organization was an R&D organization. Now, if they aren't going to create and populate and make popular the culture of failures, people will not take any kind of chances with their research. They're not going to innovate. So what they were trying to do was they were trying to create a safe space for people to fail and for people to share their failures. It was not just about sharing their failures. It was also about failing. They were trying to build up a culture of trying new things. They were trying to create a psychologically safe space of trust. So you are the master of what you want to share, basis in what situation you are. So once your why is clear, I hope I have made enough case of why you need to share your stories. In some cases, as a leader, you can share your stories of failure too. How many of you have heard this line from Ratan Tata when he said, "It's lonely here at the top"? Have you heard this line? Thank you, Suraj. Shivani is nodding. Sakshi, Narendra. Isn't this a story in itself? The story doesn't need to be very long. So every time when I'm in a position of responsibility and I want to give up because I know I can't share my vulnerabilities with anyone, I look up to this man who heads one of the largest conglomerates in India, and even he feels lonely at the top. That's one leader inspiring another leader in different capacities. In this one line, he has talked about his situation. He has said, hasn't he told his situation? Hasn't he told what action he takes by saying he's lonely? Hasn't he said what results it brings to him, that he remains lonely at the top? It's a story. Stories don't have to be long. Yes, of course, the context will always be the key word and the determining factor. So I believe now that I have built up enough case for people to understand that you got to identify your stories. And as leaders, it is your responsibility to find the good stories to tell. So that one, you can inspire. Two, you can lead. You can have influence as a leader, like Joel and Leo had built up. And you can build up your executive presence, looked upon as a leader. How many of you remember, okay, one more story to build up the case. How many of you remember, I don't know how many of you, I'll tell you what I remember. We had this professor in college, okay? And every time he came into the class, good stories, I'll come to that. That's the next part, what stories to tell. As I said, why, what, and how. We had this professor in our college. I don't even remember the subject that he was teaching. That was like 17 years ago. And he came into the class and he said, and he would watch us, and we were a ruckus lot. We weren't good students. And he said, and he would start with, when I was in Wisconsin, and there would always be a story followed by that. Years later, when I became a career coach, and I had a lot of candidates, MBA aspirants, and any one of them who would try, who said that I want to apply for Wisconsin, and that entire set of memories came rushing back. He made sure that every time he came in touch with his students, he made sure that they remember that he is an alumni from Wisconsin University. He was determining what. So I'll address that question, Narendra. Please park it for later. It is always about making a point. So you got to remember that. You got to remember that. Now, what stories to tell? For that, I'd like to share a slide because I have created a framework, very simple framework, which ensures that you do not go astray, you do not go all over the place and you share irrelevant stories. No, we have to share stories with a purpose. And what purpose it could be, I call it the voice framework for personal storytelling. It's a very simple framework which says you share stories of the values, and there are questions, accompanying each point. You're free to take a screenshot of this framework. And if you use this framework, you will never be sharing irrelevant stories, I can assure you. So when you share stories as a person, how you want to be perceived, you got to share your values. What is it that you believe in? So when we say, how many of you watched that movie 300? It came like ages ago. The Spartans. Yeah, Suraj says thumbs up. So go back. And then, he would say, there was this question, who are we? And they would shout out, we are Spartans. He's reminding them of their value, how they've been brought up. They've been brought up to fight. So when you say that, when Tata shares the stories, at the end of every story, they say, we also make steel. Values stronger than steel. And they will always have a socially responsible story to say. यहाँ तक कि टाटा चाय की कहानी में भी लोगों hashtag है जागो रे. The message is always social, but it relates to their product somehow. Because they want to communicate their values. What do I stand for? So this one becomes easy because at workplace, what you need to do is, for Narendra who said, it is not appreciated when I share stories of previous organization, you have to sieve out stories which stand for your organizational values. Every organization has its vision, mission, values set out, right? So you have to build up common ground. I'm taking a detour because values is that topic. Values is the place wherein you look for common ground. And you look for common ground across all these points, Common ground is the key word. आज हम बैठे हैं Indian culture में. And if you keep talking about what happened in America, people will like, acha yaar, don't tell me about all your American, don't boast about your American experiences. What you might want to tell them was, like in here, we have these morning meetings. They also have their morning catch-up meetings. It made me feel at home when I was there. Look for common ground, and then you can go on to tell only one difference, They got over only in 15 minutes and we sit for an hour. If you are open to listening and identifying how they manage this entire agenda in 15 minutes, may I share it with you? Put the ball in the other person's court. And everyone wants to sound responsible. At least okay and open-minded. Okay, let's listen. That's because you created that common ground. Do you want to improve productivity? So look for the common ground. So when you share values ka story, when you're an independent, self-employed consultant, trainer, coach, CA practitioner, then you talk about values, which are your values. But as an executive in the corporate, you talk about values which match with the values of the organization, which everyone ought to adhere by. Next is stories of your origin. I met somebody, or rather I met a lot of army officers. Okay. And in one location, we were doing this project for Army Wives. So I met one set of Army Wives in one base in Kolkata. And then I met another set of Army Wives in Delhi. And then I just told them about certain names, the ones I interacted with in Kolkata. And Army has this culture of units. And one lady, she was like, yeah, she belongs to our unit. We were once posted together. What happened? Their origin was same. They all belonged to one unit. Suddenly there was this connection. She knows somebody from my origin. What happens with us when we work in cities like Pune, when we work in cities like Bangalore and Hyderabad? When you're in a team, Acha, you sound like a North Indian. Are you from Delhi? And the moment you know somebody is also from Delhi, there is this camaraderie. So for 22 years of my life, I was in Chandigarh. And then I was roaming around the country for 5 years, and I got married and settled in Kolkata. And when I speak still date, people will ask me, you don't look like from here. But then there are times when I meet somebody and they're like, are you from Chandigarh? And I'm like, this person identified my, are you from the north? They don't specifically say Chandigarh. They're like, you look like from the north. Where are you from? I say Chandigarh. And then they say, I am from Jalandhar. And then there is this immediate bonding. Army people, when they belong to the same unit, there is this immediate bonding. When you go to MBA schools, B schools, there is this hostel culture. Where engineering and MBA schools, which hostel were you in? So the moment you meet somebody who's an alumni of the same college, even if they are different batches, they ask you, which hostel were you in? And hostel is like a big bro code in certain colleges. It's like you are like my brother with no blood relation, but because there is the same lineage. That's the story of your origin. That's the story of your origin. Where do I come from? Why do I believe in what I believe? The most hostels say, that's why your mindset is like this. Oh, you started your career with Infosys? That's the reason you have this, this taste for good living. Because Infosys, when you go into the Mysore campus, it gives you the taste of a luxurious living. It sets your standards high. So when you share stories of your origin, it gives us that insight into the person. I'll tell you another story about origin, okay? This one really is very close to my heart. I was in a college, MBA college. I was talking to a set of students and I was sharing this, this particular framework with them. And the student stands up and he says, ma'am, if I don't want to share about my origin to anyone, how is it going? I don't want to share. I'm not proud of my background. I don't want to share my background. And I said, if you feel these are your friends who are sitting in this room, if you trust me, I would request you to share about your origin. And he said, I come from the slums. And I worked as a bartender for 3 years. I don't think the story is going to help me in any way. And I don't want to create a sob story. I have my self-respect. I have worked hard to reach her. I said, you already told a story. And then I took it further. It was my job to take it a little further. I said, you worked as a bartender? He said, yes. I said, what were you doing as a bartender? He was like, I was serving drinks. I said, who were you serving it to? to the clients, the visitors to the bar. I said, okay. So you were in a client-facing role, is it? He was taken aback. He was like, yeah. And then I asked him, were all the clients nice to you? He said, no, most of them were indifferent. Some of them were friendly because they were regulars. And then occasionally I had these rude, angry clients too. I said, what did you do with these angry clients? He said, I just kept a plain face, a palm face, and I did my job. I served them. I said, wow, you are excellent for a client-facing role in any corporate. You have dealt with a variety of clients. You know how to deal with irate clients also, to keep your calm in the face of adversity and difficult clients. That boy, 21-year-old boy, trust me, the happiness on his face that he could make something out of this origin story as a bartender, it still takes my heart away whenever I think about his smile. Your origin story also tells about your values. It tells about your competencies. It tells about the metal that you're made up of. Next is the most common story which we as professionals, as consultants, as coaches, as trainers are supposed to tell. What is it that I offer? I don't want to spend too much time on it because this is one of the simplest forms of brand storytelling, which says, what is the pain point? What is the pain point? What am I giving you? And what will change? Most of the brand stories fall into this category. So I'll not spend time on this. This is like the essential form of storytelling. But, for me, the least exciting form of storytelling, because this is what we look at unconsciously every day. We got to do it for our work also. Places where, you're building up personal connects is what excites me more. The customer story. Now, I am offering you something to improve the system, but if nothing changes for me after the improvement of the system, it doesn't help me. We have all grown up watching these stories. How many of you remember? So I will take the screen off sharing because I want to watch your reactions. Good morning, Abhijit.
Morning.
I just saw you. Yes. So how many of you remember watching those late night 11 o'clock tele shopping ads on Z Network wherein they said, मैं बहुत परेशान था. और क्यों मैं बहुत परेशान था? Because the mattress that I slept on was so hard that I would keep tossing and turning in my bed all night, and I would wake up all tired with sleep not ready, and I would struggle with my day chores because I could not sleep properly all night. And then came the water mattress. It has the flexibility to take the shape of my back. I'm speaking this out in English because I'm not sure how many of you are comfortable with Hindi. It would take the shape of my back and it gives me the comfort that I wake up fresh every morning. Yahan tak, it is an inspiration story. What is changing? As in, what am I offering? Brand story. But when I wake up early in the morning, I'm able to do all my day chores with a lot of effectivity and productivity. I'm much more productive and effective, and I'm a happy person. That is a customer story. What changed for the customer? The testimonials we seek from our clients and customers? These are customer stories. They are about us, but they're more about the customer. What changed for them? Like, I will seek testimonials and recommendations on LinkedIn after this session. And I would say, please do leave in a recommendation if you like this session and tell me how it helped you. That's a customer story. I want you to tell your story. And I have a small role to play that I was the one to cause that happiness to you. That's a customer story. And when you combine, I'll come back to the slide. When you combine all of these 4 factors, you come up with an elevator pitch. Because when you combine all these stories, you will figure out what is the theme of your story. So as a person, as a professional, what are you helping your clients and customers with? Now, remember, these clients and customers could be internal or external. But what are you helping them with? So some of you will come up with a theme like I help, like Abhijit, he helps de-risk your risk factors. Some of you will say, I help cut costs in my organization. Some of you will say, I help improve productivity. Some of you will say, I am a business developer for my organization, but how are you a business developer? I help my organization acquire 10 new clients every month. So once you have a theme to your story, what you need to do is you need to create your elevator pitch. And I want to say it in a very teacher-like tone. In a very teacher-like tone. I'm sharing a format with you. Please create an elevator pitch for yourself by heart it. Because it will encapsulate you and your entire life as a professional, as a person. And when you're ready with your elevator pitch at all times, you don't know from where the opportunity might knock. Yes, I will. My elevator pitch, Anita, I will do that. Give me a moment. So this is the format. You can be creative. But to start with, I prescribe this format because it helps you put because our focus is mostly professional and career-wise. Excuse me, please. If you master this pitch, you will know how to play around your personal experiences also with this pitch. So if I were to fit in my pitch in this format, I would say, I am your story coach. With my 17 years of experience as an HR professional, wherein I took 8,000 interviews and read through some 10,000 resumes. And after that, having helped some 1,000 candidates to apply for MBA abroad, writing their SOPs, it has helped me understand the nuances of personal storytelling. The clients who worked with me, they find value in understanding which stories they should share where and what platform. And my strength is that I work from your perspective, help you find your stories within 2 coaching sessions. And scripting is absolutely my strength. Which words to be spoken first and which words to be spoken later is my absolute strength. So now I am looking to work with people and professionals who are looking to build up their personal brand, or rather who are looking to identify the stories they need to tell to build up their personal brand, and help them grow professionally. Now, once I have this entire pitch ready, I can take the liberty of picking and choosing portions of it and speaking them out as and when necessary. They say in public speaking, so some of us, we have this, I don't learn it. I just pick up the key points. But then there are people who say, like Steve Jobs, who say, practice it so much that when I'm performing it, it looks like natural. I've practiced it so much that it comes out spontaneously. Imagine, let me pick this up. Imagine Steve Jobs doing this on stage. He picks up an envelope. He does this, then he does this, and then he does this. He puts it in his palm, and then he pulls out the Mac machine. And he makes sure that the Mac machine scrapes through the corners of the packet to have that sound effect near his microphone. And he pulls it out and he shows people that this is just this thin. The reason for holding it like this and turning it around like this was, one, so that people have a view of how thin this is. And here, so that he can pull it out in a manner so that the microphone catches the voice of the machine being pulled out and scraping through the envelope. And then he discards the packet and holds it. Do you think this was spontaneous? It was practiced 90 times. So practice your elevator pitch so many times that if you have full 2 minutes in an interview to answer the question, tell us about yourself, you are able to speak out the complete elevator pitch. Absolutely, Pinaki. Practice makes a man authentic. But then you actually also have to be authentic. Because I believe that humans are all very intelligent. They can look through your eyes and they can figure out when you're bluffing. So that's a discussion for a different day. And it has to be automatic. Yes, that's a better word. So what was I telling about? That if you have just 30 seconds in an elevator, you can figure out which is the most important part of your elevator pitch that you need to tell people. Or the person listening to you. Or if you're in an interview or a client meeting wherein they want to know more about you, you have the complete elevator pitch ready. Yes, Shivani, practice is the key, I think. I think practice is the key. Rest, everything is fancy, But consistency and practice is the key. So when you use this voice framework, you know what stories to tell. Do we have another 10 minutes to discuss how to craft your stories? Because that's the only
Sure.
Hirani says, sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah?
No, many people said,
yes, I think there are 32 people still there, so I'm presuming they want to listen to me.
And mainly out of 39, only 6 people have left.
Pardon me?
Out of 39 total, only 6 people have left, 6 or 7.
So that's what I said, that I'm presuming that people want to listen. All right. So talking about coming back, I touched upon it, the STAR approach. This is the simplest format of creating your personal story. What it says is a situation. Thank you, Alok. It is good for my ego. You're good for my ego, I would say. All of us have egos. People who say I don't have an ego are lying. All of us have egos. So STAR approach is, what situation are you in? So army people, if you've heard about army people, they'll say, when I was in Kargil war, we were required to hold the front. even in the face of climatic adversity. So, दो बातें बता दी उन्होंने. They've told you about the situation when we were in Kargil war, the action that they were required to take. The task at hand was to hold the front. And what action did they take? All of us, held our hands, or rather made sure that we stand side by side, leading, no way for any blind spots. No space for any blind spots. And the result was, we came back as whole one team. So if you see all Mission Impossible movies, all army or suspense movies, all thrillers, they fit into this format of star. At workplace, it's the story that I shared yesterday. If you're in a corporate workplace, you use the star format all the time in your appraisal. The client gave us a requirement. The client demanded us to submit an RFP with a short deadline of 48 hours. The situation. The task at hand, the situation is 48 hours, short deadline. The task at hand was to create the RFP. Now, if you want to complicate the situation further, it was a matter of chance that the key pre-sales person was on leave and off the radar, off the grid. We couldn't connect with him. So the challenge has gone a notch higher. The difficulty level has gone a notch higher. And the task at hand is, with 10 hours of less man hours now, because one person is not there, we had to manage. What action did we take? We logged in at 6 o'clock in the morning, started working. The action. अब action में एक और factor आता है, approach. What approach did we take? So did we work parallelly together? Did we distribute the portions and segments amongst us team members? And the result was that we were able to submit the RFP on time. Now that became a test. I will take the results a little further because ये अभी मैंने inspire किया है सिर्फ. How I help. What changed for the customer? नहीं बोला है. I haven't said what changed for the customer. And in this case, the customer is the employer, not the client. The customer is the employer. Why? Because what happened was, because we were able to submit it in time, we were also able to leverage and have an upper hand over the client and bag a repeat business of these many million. So this is what I did for my employer, not for the customer. Now, how can I turn this story in favor of the customer or the client? Because we were able to submit the RFP on time, the customer was able to make a very quick decision and save some costs on this, on a particular challenge, जिसका RFP था. Does it make sense? Thank you so much, Suraj. You've been my cheerleader throughout the session. It gives me confidence when somebody is doing this, when somebody is nodding, when somebody is raised, moving with your hand gestures. Thank you so much. And yes, thank you, Shivani, for elaborating the star approach in the chat box. This is the most common and the most effective format. Now, there is one more which is slightly simpler to understand, and that is CIDs. How many of you have watched CID on television? I want a yes in the chat box. This would be interesting to listen. How many of you know ACP Pradyuman? Daya, kuch to karna padega. Yeah? Okay. A lot of you say yes. Wow. People who haven't participated or messaged since the beginning of the session are also typing in a yes. Imagine the popularity. Kuch to gadbad hai, right? But sadly, I am not talking about this CID. Oh, nice. That must have been a fangirl moment, Anita. Anita says she's met them when they were shooting. So what are the CIDs that I'm not talking about CID, I'm talking about CIDs. Ek CID kafi nahi hai. What are these CIDs? These CIDs are contribution and impact driven stories. C, contribution, I, impact, D, driven stories. A lot of you had this doubt, we might be, our stories might be misused. Again, what stories to tell? If you aren't telling a story of your contribution, if you aren't telling a story of what impact that contribution had. There is a reel on the Instagram, wherein this person is making a contribution on iftar, by saying, please bring and keep it here. Please bring and keep it here. That's his contribution. But is that contribution? He's spending his time and effort standing there and making gestures, But is that contribution having any impact? Is it having any impact? There could be two ways to answer this. One is the person bringing in knows it is to be kept on the table. There is no impact of his contribution of time and gesture effort. But if that person says, the person who was serving on the table was new and he didn't know how the table is to be laid out. He didn't know there is a specific order of keeping the dishes on the table. It is a worship-worthy occasion for us. And things have to be laid out in a format, and that person was new. So I helped him lay out the table. Does his contribution have an impact now? So now this becomes a CID, a contribution and impact driven story. I work for 15 hours. I clock 15 hours every day. That's my contribution. But people aren't interested in your contribution anymore because with flexible work timings, you could log in 24 hours. From work or from home culture, you could log in even maybe, 25 hours also. Not possible. So 24 hours yoga. But is it having any impact? Has the bottom line to the organization improved? Have we met all the deadlines? So people who are in, maintenance in software companies or for CAs, I see a lot of CAs here. If you aren't adhering to the timelines, you working 18 hours a day is of no use to me. If you can tell me that we have been able to submit the returns for 99 of our 100 clients at the first deadline and not the extended deadline, that makes sense to me. That is a contribution with an impact. I manage a team of 10 people. Now, these 10 people could be the most useless people in the organization who have never met a deadline, who have never been successful in meeting the sales targets, who always have a complaint from the client. Does it matter then if I manage a team of 10 people or 50 people? But I manage a team of 10 people who have never had an instance of a red eye client, irate client in the last 6 months. Does that make sense? So if your contribution doesn't have an impact, it makes no sense for me. It is of no use to me. So always make sure that your contribution has an impact and your story depicts the contribution as well as the impact. The stories can be told in one line also.
You can take a 1 minute pause and be
Please,
comfortable.
thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm really thankful to you that in spite of all this, you continue. Thank you.
Just a small thing, Anupriya. I just wanted to bring out. It's a perspective, right? So whatever you do, I believe that you do to make the situation what you are right now better. Whatever work you do, whatever you do at home, anywhere, wherever. So in that perspective, anything you do would always have an impact. The ability to identify that impact and then be able to do the story in the way in which you want to would be able to fit into that CID, and therefore that part, the point of being able to identify, becomes the most important aspect. So how you look at things, the perspective of how you look at things, if you can, might be, I'm
So
sitting
that's
here.
that's the reason I spent 50 minutes, rather 60 minutes talking about only why you need to tell stories and what stories to tell. The how is only a syntax. You get it now? Why we are at 8:25? The reason being that you got to understand, one, is your why clear? Why are you sharing a personal story? If you just go out and tell a sob story to people, it's not going to help. Nobody's interested. Right? So thank you, Suraj, for pointing that out. That reinstates my philosophy of spending most of the time on telling people why you need to tell your stories and what stories to tell. No, Pankaj, I am not that disciplined to be able to manage a podcast. I just wait for occasions to be invited to speak at such sessions. That also is a story in itself. So I think I have, encapsulated. There are other formats of storytelling. There is one hero's journey, which requires a little more time. But for the purpose of this audience, I think if you adhere to STAR approach and the CID approach, it is a good start. And then hero's journey becomes slightly more advanced. That is maybe for some another day or a one-to-one interaction. So I'm open to that too. But for how to write a story or tell a story, if you have these two tools in your hand, the STAR approach or the CIDs, you should be able to tell a decent story, which will benefit you, your organization, your team, your group, whatever. So thank you so much. Now we can take questions. I am sure that, okay, so I don't know if I'm at the liberty to say this, but thank you so much, everyone, for sticking around, for listening to me, for motivating me enough that despite my bad throat, I've been able to speak. Abhijit will tell you how much I love speaking. So that's no problem at all. But now I'm open to taking questions. So if you have questions, please type them out or you can unmute and we can take questions. And others, have a great weekend, have a great life, and happy storytelling.
Thank you so much, Anupriya. Actually, I learned a lot, and now speaking at TEDx was one of my dream, and now I got the very ideas of speaking, and I got my elevator pitch. So thank you so much for making things
just
clear,
for the benefit
especially
of the audience, Shivani, just for the benefit for the audience and you, we are doing a workshop, an online workshop on from 20th to 22nd September about storytelling, and the focus will be about, if you want to become a TEDx speaker, what are the stories you ought to tell. So I will share the details with you. If you feel appropriate, please share those details in your group. I would be glad and grateful. So yeah.
Thank you so much. So many learnings, especially the Star Alliance. I have heard it somewhere, but I forgot it when you asked, have you heard about the Star Alliance? And then when you repeat it, I just got it in my memory. And as it is said, repetition is the mother of all learning. So it was great to have you today with us, as well as learning the Star Alliance and CIDs and so many acronyms of the voice and everything. So it was a great learning session for all of us. If I'm invite anyone who wants to speak we'll continue for next 5 or 10 minutes and then we'll. So Abhijit sir and Rajkumar sir, would you like to add on your views?
Yeah, okay. Suraj here. Let me speak a few words. Thanks, first of all, wonderful. It's been excellent. Those points which you brought out, they are actually very relevant. I was just thinking how you can use that in your writing, actually. And now I've realized what to do. Put this star and the CID into everything that you put down, even on paper, and might be wherever you want. So that would be excellent. It's a very, very good thing that you can employ. In my line of work, in a government job, this type of storytelling might have to be modified a little bit, which I will do. I've thought of what to do about it. Still, I'll get a lot of ideas. So that's great. What you're talking, we already saw that, and we are really we don't need any other people to explain anything regarding how you love talking, which is great. And the way you talk, the way you're able to convey that thing is excellent. So it just got into my mind. The frequency actually matches very well, which is excellent. And thanks for this wonderful session, even at the cost of your throat a little bit, which way I hope gets soon well within
whatever. With all your wishes, yes. With all your wishes, yes.
So all the best to you. Have an excellent day. And as I put some points I've taken for myself, so I will do that. I'm writing a story. I'll use this. Thanks for that.
Anita wants to say something.
Yeah, Anita, go ahead.
Anita, you may speak. We see your hand raised.
Yes, Anita.
Yeah. So, Anupriya, thank you for this amazing session. The way you conducted the session, like it was also in the structure of storytelling only. मतलब storytelling को भी storytelling के view से ही आपने हमें सिखाया. That's a great art, and I appreciate you for that. I would like to highlight one point from my perspective, that I am a firm believer of being authentic. So when we go for stories which have a pre-structure or structured or keeping all the pointers in mind, I somewhere feel that won't the story lose its authenticity?
Okay. So Anita, if I may answer this question, the point is authenticity is uncompromisable. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing is there's a book and an author who talks about that, sometimes as time passes, the brain works in a manner that it creates layers around our memories. And those layers are made to suit how we want to carry on that memory. how we want to hold that memory. So sometimes a story of struggle at that point of time, probably we were battered. We weren't looking at surviving or fighting it. We just lived through it. But later on, when we made something of our life, we still lived through it, right? We were resilient enough to not give up and live through it. That's what the memory says. That's what the brain has built up the story around. So when you say that I lived through, instead of saying lived through, you say I fought through an adverse situation or a circumstance in life. You are not lying, actually. You have just tweaked it a little for the benefit of the audience. The authenticity still remains. I'm talking about authenticity, I wrote this book called Your Personal Brand, which focuses on, the stories that you need to identify to build up your personal brand. And the chapter is authentic. The first chapter is authentic. Because until you are authentic, it is not about other people losing trust in you or not. You will only get confused after a point of time that what is it that you were trying to establish. वो कहते हैं एक झूठ को छुपाने के लिए 100 झूठ बोलने पड़ते हैं. It's the same thing, if you're not being authentic, you will forget what you said. And when you're being authentic, you don't need to remember what you said. जब आपको पता है आप हमेशा सच बोल रहे हैं तो आपको याद नहीं रखना पड़ता है कि आपने क्या बोला था.
I guess I'm not able to convey what I want to ask. See, for me, I am a person who loves the natural flow.
Okay.
So whatever that is coming naturally to me, I believe that is like my authenticity.
Okay, that means
if I go and make it structured, means when I have to think before speaking, like okay, इसको इस structure में बोलना है, इस structure में बोलना है, then I feel that I am losing my authenticity.
Okay, so then I have to come back to the very principle of communication. Communication क्या कहता है? एक sender है, एक receiver है और बीच में language है, which is like a code, right? The basic principle of communication says that your code has to be written in a way that what the sender sent and what the receiver received is the same. Until you design your message, this is never going to be the case. Like we had a gap of understanding what you wanted to ask. I took it in a different meaning and I gave you a different answer.
Yeah,
we spend a little more time. So it's a live example of sometimes what you want to say, the other person isn't understanding. And that's the very reason you got to choose your words. I'll give you a simple example, okay? बहुत ही प्यारा सा example है. I worked with an army wife who told her story this 21st of August in our event where I got felicitated by the president. She's 4 feet 9 inches and her husband is 6 feet 3 inches. And she said, when I met him and when we fell in love and all that, and he proposed me, I asked him, height का difference देखा है हमारा? कैसे निभेगी हमारी? So, for the benefit of people who do not understand Hindi, please listen through this because इसका impact English में नहीं आएगा. That's what she asked her husband. Now the husband said, how she told me, the husband said, तुम मेरे दिल की धड़कन तक आ जाती हो. मेरी धड़कन सुनते रहना. Right? I just tweaked it a little. And what I did was, in her script, I said, ऐसे बोलना है. तुम्हारा कान मेरे दिल तक पहुंच जाता है. मेरे दिल की धड़कन सुनते रहना. बस. both the stories are same? Is the same thing?
Yes.
लेकिन जब मैं वो बस ऐड कर देती हूं तो उसका इम्पैक्ट अलग हो जाता है.
Right.
So that's the magic a properly crafted message makes. And this is not just about storytelling. This is about any kind of communication. When you prepare your message, when you craft your message, the impact can go from here to here. वो जो उसने यहां तक की वो जो उसने मेरे दिल की धड़कन सुनते रहना, pause and then bus and then a 2x pause before she continued. Even the pause communicates so much.
Yeah. Thank you. This is like a bulb on moment for me. Now I can resonate with the point. Means I am connecting the dot. When you say that practice it so much that it comes naturally. मतलब even to practice this pause and everything.
नींद में भी उठ के बोल देंगे हम बच्चों को बोलते हैं ना ऐसे याद होना चाहिए कि नींद में भी उठ के बोल सको.
Right. So if I practice it so much that it starts coming to me naturally, then I feel I will not lose my authenticity.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yes, Alok.
Hi, Anupriya.
Good morning.
Hello.
Thank you
Good
for
morning.
being very active in the chat box.
Thank you. And it was amazing listening to you and really impressed by the way you do storytelling and with all your gestures and your smiling face. And we didn't realize that you were having a bad throat. We come to know about it, but you did not show it on your face. So that is really I learned from today's session. That despite of all the adversities that we might have, if we have a purpose and a why clear, we can do anything.
Yes.
So I have a little question
Yeah.
that I am a professor and I do teach students on a daily basis, sometimes professionals also. So how can I keep my content engaging every day? So I have to go to and put up to the show to the same audience on a daily basis, maybe for some long period
So
of
this
time.
was
Okay.
a very
Yeah,
short time
so
that we had. There is, there are certain more things that we discuss in storytelling. And one of the things is that the story that you share has to have the end message in mind. So from what you told me, your challenge is to keep the students engaged. Now
right.
you have to take a decision whether you want to keep students engaged by the subject matter content, or you just want to create a lively atmosphere in the classroom. So I'll give you an
Right.
example. There is this lady called Meetu, and she teaches English to students who appear for government exams, PCS, UPSC, banking, and all that. She teaches English. Now, the examples that she uses are always about boys and girls. One example that she used was, Kehti, mere paas, I observed a group of boys sitting, and they said that, one of the boys was telling, wo dekh, teri bhabhi ja rahi hai. So in this case, what is the noun? Bhabhi. And what is teri? So generally, teri is a pronoun, but in this case, teri is an adjective because it is explaining about the noun.
Right.
So she's bought in subject matter content also, and she's bought in a topic or a story that will interest that age group also. These are all what? 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds who are doing undergrads and preparing for banking exams or UPSC
Correct.
exams. So they're in that age group of, boys and girls and talking about, all this stuff, which is entertaining. Even if they don't do that personally, it is entertaining for them. So you need to identify what is the problem or what is the challenge that you're trying to solve. And basis that you bring in the stories.
So basically, you have to understand what the audience is looking for, and then design your
That's
stories
always,
possible.
always. That's why customer is there in the voice framework. What will change for the customer? So if your customer is your
Okay.
students and it is a very mundane lecture, they get bored. I want to make it
Exactly.
more lively for them. Your problem statement becomes this. How can then the how comes into picture? What do you need to do?
Right.
You need to make it lively. Last is how, which is syntax. There are 100 ways that you will find out.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any more questions? I think Narendra had a question. Narendra, would you like to speak?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for such a lovely session. You spoke so very well and really inspired the whole lot who have attended today. I have been in industry quite, long period, and you have really addressed that question. But you can speak a little more about it. That you would quite elaborate on sharing stories in the corporate environment, which is in these days. I have noticed, how the culture has changed. I have been in industry since the 80s, and in the 80s, when we used to go to office, we used to hug each other. We were youngsters, and the new lot, and we used to hug each other. But as time passed by in the 2010s and 20s, people, they don't even shake hands with each other. I mean, what to talk about stories? So sometimes, one is left just wondering how the times have changed and how to share stories with people. That is in corporate culture, I'm saying. So that is something which needs to be researched upon.
Addressed.
Do you agree? First of all, do you agree to me?
Yes, I do. The culture has changed because there is. We are living in times wherein we have almost 3 to 4 generations working in the same workplace. So you said you worked in the 80s. So every 12 years, if we say there is a generation gap, which is shortened to 8 years now, we have 4 generations working in a workplace. So that is a very conscious culture building intervention that is required, and storytelling has a role to play in it. How? That's a long discussion for another day, but it is possible.
No, definitely you spoke so nicely. One really loves talking to people like you, even in the new generation or even in the older generation. I have been active till 1 or 2 years ago in industry. Even now, I'm rediscovering myself. So the thing is that even people of my generation, I'm telling you, who were at the senior positions like me in organizations recently, they, when I used to shake hands, they used to resist it. That you don't need to be so informal with people. That is something so. And it depends on the nature. My nature is such that I want to hug my colleague.
So Narendra, in the interest of time, I would like to conclude this discussion that one is, it's not that simple as 2 plus 2. It's not that simple. It's a complete intervention. What role storytelling has to play in it is again a different kind of a discussion and intervention. So everything, one concept cannot address everything. That's all that I would like to conclude this with. And I would love to have a one-to-one interaction with you anytime when you need to or ought to have it. And
Thank
we
you
can
very much.
discuss the role that storytelling can.
I once again thank you very much. You speak so well.
Thank you so
really,
much.
really great, really great.
Thank you so much. Yes, Manisha. Manisha, tell me. Thank you for being active throughout the session on the chat box.
Yeah, hello, ma'am. Thank you
Please
so
call
much
me Anupriya.
for giving me a minute. Just one simple guidance or a working tool. If you are in a session addressing about 200 people, and language is the barrier. It consists of children who have both English and Hindi knowledge, but at the same time, for them the barrier is the language. In that case, can you just guide me how to help them out to come out that the barrier is in the mind, language is no barrier? Any point where you can just help me?
See, again, Manisha, this is an individual discussion. It's a very specific problem that you have. In a generic manner, what I can say is find the common ground. Tell them a story about a person who had a language barrier and she was able to overcome it. So it is always about one, who are the audience and what is their problem? And what is the outcome that you're looking at?
Should I express it?
May I add?
Yes,
Okay, fine. Okay, can I take
in
next?
NLP we say meet the person where they are and then place them to where you want them to be.
Yes.
So it's quite similar what you talked about, and we would like to close the session. It has already extended over time.
So just give me one moment if I can share my
okay.
LinkedIn profile so that
I have
people
already
can-
shared with the group.
Oh, you have?
I have shared with
Okay,
the group.
Okay. Because if there are,
So
I
we'll
see some
connect
people might
and-
have more questions. So
Yeah,
I would love
have,
them to connect with me.
I have shared your LinkedIn profile as well as we'll connect of the session, and we'll have more details about the preparation of TEDx talk and share with the audience. Whosoever is interested will join.
Sure.
Thank you so
Thank you
much
so
for
much,
giving your
everyone.
time despite your throat problem, and we wish you good health as well as luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye,
much, everyone,
everyone.
for joining in, making the session successful.